Hi there. We all use dates in our Excel spreadsheets, whether it's a hire date, a sales transaction date, an expiry date, a value date for an invoice, or in many other situations. We use dates for performing date math. I'm Nabil Murad. In this tutorial, I show you how to create a very useful dynamic calendar in Excel for any month in the past or in the future, and be able to change it on the fly by selecting different options from a drop list. In this project, we'll create two drop lists for the month and years. We'll then learn about dates in Excel. We'll build up the required start date for our calendar using date function, VLOOKUP function. We'll then define a name for our created date. We start creating the setup for our calendar using the Weekday Function, an if function. We'll then improve the appearance of our calendar and apply some conditional formatting. Finally, we'll test our calendar by using our drop lists. We have a lot to learn, so let's see how we build our project from ground up in Excel. This is my start file for creating my dynamic calendar. It has nothing but some labels, and I adjusted some column width. I would like to start by creating a drop list for the month and a drop list for the year, and to do that I have to prepare by creating a list of months to use it for my data validation list. I'm selecting cell M2 and I'll start by typing the first month, and then to create an incremental list of months I click and drag, and I would have created an incremental list of months by dragging from the autofill handle. I will have to do the same for the year, and let's say I will start by year 2005, and then to create an incremental list of years I have to hover over the lower right corner the autofill handle, and this time I have to press the Control key while dragging to create an incremental list of years. Now that I have the two lists, I can go and create my data validation lists. I'm selecting cell D1, and then I go to the Data tab of the ribbon, and on the Data tab of the ribbon I'll be selecting Data Validation. And when I select Data Validation, what would you like to allow in this cell? I want to allow a list, so I click on the down arrow and select list. What's the source for this list? Here is the source values for the list of months that I just created, and then I hit OK, and I would have created my first list. Let's select from this drop list, and let's say I'll be selecting June. Now I want to create my second drop list. I could always go to the Data tab of the ribbon and click on Data Validation as I did before, but let me show you another way of doing things. I'll be using the shortcut Alt-DL, Tab-L, Tab. Alt-DL opens the same data validation dialog box, and when I hit Tab-L, Tab, I have my blinking cursor in the source box ready to click and drag and select the different years from the list of years that I created, and then I hit OK, and I would have created my second drop list. And let's say I'll be selecting one of the years for this drop list. Let's say I'm selecting 2018. Now I would like to start creating my dynamic calendar, and before I do, we need to understand what is a date in Excel. What is a date in Excel? A date is stored in Excel as a number. Day 1 in Excel is the 1st of January 1900. Every day then increments by 1. So today's date is just an incremental number from the 1st of January 1900. Whether you format the dates as short dates, or long dates, or even apply a custom format, Excel will always perceive them as numbers. To reveal the numbers stored behind the scene, you can apply the general format, or use the shortcut Ctrl-Shift-tilde. Tilde is to the left side of number 1 on an American keyboard. And because a date is stored in Excel as a number, we have a broad category of functions that enable us to perform date math to calculate any date in the past or in the future. On a Mac, day 1 is the 1st of January 1904. In VBA, we can go back to the 1st of January 1600. Now I'm in cell B3. I would like to create a label for my calendar, and this label will be combining the month coming from cell D1 and the year coming from cell G1. So I'll be typing an equal sign, and I click on cell D1, and then I want to join it to a space, so I use the Shift 7, the joining operator of Excel, the and symbol, the ampersand, and then I want a space in between, and the space is typed in double quotation, so I type double quote space double quote, and finally I want to join it to the year, so I use another Shift 7, the and symbol on your keyboard, and then click on cell G1, and I would have created a dynamic label. What does it mean, a dynamic label? It means if you change your selection from the drop list, then your label will change as well. I created my dynamic label, and I want to center it across my calendar. So to do this, I could select all the cells. I don't use the merge and center command available on the home tab because it destroys the structure of my cells. Alternatively, I'll be using the format cell dialog box, and to open the format cell dialog box, I could right click and select format cell from the right click menu. Alternatively, I could use the shortcut Ctrl+1 to open the format cell. And since we are talking about alignment, I'll go to the alignment tab, and here is the horizontal alignment option. Click on the down arrow and select center across selection. When I hit OK, I get the same exact result as if I used the merge and center without merging or destroying the structure of my cell. My next step will be building the first day of any month by using a date function. The date function is used to build up any date by combining three values: a year, a month, and a day. The date function will then return a calendar day. We can add to or subtract from any one of the arguments to return a date in the past or in the future. To create my date function, which will return the first day of any month in any year, I'm selecting cell K1 and I'll type equal date. And when I hit tab, it asks me for a year, and the year comes from my drop list. Then I hit comma, and then it asks me for a month, and the month comes from cell D1. And then finally, I want the first day of the month, so I'm in the day argument. I want day 1, and then I close bracket. But note, before I hit enter, I'm telling you up front, it will be returning a value error. And let me hit enter and see the value error. Then I'll be explaining to you why it's returning the value error. I'm selecting the same cell. I put it in the edit mode F2 because this function is expecting numbers. G1 is a number. The day is a number, number 1, but D1 is a text. Instead of D1, I would like to return the month as a number. And to do this, I will have to create a VLOOKUP function. Let's prepare for the VLOOKUP function, and for each month in column N, I'll be providing a number. So I'll start by typing number 1 for January, then I press Ctrl and drag down, and I would have created an incremental list of numbers. Now let's go and edit my date function by putting it in the edit mode and hitting F2. And now I could select this part, and I select it easily by clicking on the month argument in the screen tip. It selects D1, and this D1 should be replaced by a VLOOKUP function. The VLOOKUP function will look at the name of the month coming from the drop list, and then it will go to my table array and select the number from column number 2. I start typing VLOOKUP, and then I hit tab. What's your lookup value? My lookup value is cell D1. And then I hit comma. What's your table array? Well, I would like to select the table array. The screen tip bothers me, so I'm moving it to the right. And then I'll start by selecting the first row, Shift Control down arrow, and then I hit comma. I would like a return value. The column index number should come from column 2, and I'm looking for an exact match, and an exact match means false. False in computer language means 0, so I type 0 and then close the bracket. Now my date function should return the first day of August 2020, so when I hit enter, it's the 1st of August 2020. My next step will be creating my calendar. And creating my calendar requires using two different functions. I need to create a function in the upper left cell. And then I'll be creating one other function for all the remaining cells of my calendar. The function that I'll be using for generating the day in the upper left corner of my dynamic calendar will require two things. It will require naming the cell that I just created, cell K1, and number two, it will require using a weekday function. So let's start by naming this cell. I'm selecting cell K1. I click in the name box and let's call it start and then hit enter. Now let's understand the weekday function. The weekday function returns the day of the week corresponding to a date. It returns it as a number ranging from 1 for Sunday to 7 for Saturday. That's the default. The weekday for 28th of October 2019 returns 2, which means Monday. Note the weekday function returns the day as a number. Should you wish to get it as a text, then you can either combine it with a VLOOKUP function or use a text function instead. You can always change the default of having Sunday as day 1 of the week by changing the return type argument, and pick up a different option from the flyout menu. If this argument is omitted, then Sunday is day 1. And I would like to test creating the weekday for the date in cell K1, so I'll type equal weekday. And then I hit tab. I want the weekday of this one. I'm not providing any other arguments. I'll keep the default for the return type, which means Sunday is day number 1. And then when I hit enter, it says 7. That means the 1st of August 2020 will be a Saturday. Let me show you a calendar for November 2018 to understand what will be the cell in the upper left corner of my dynamic calendar based on whatever the result of the weekday function for any month in any year. So I'm switching to my other worksheet just to explain a concept, and in this worksheet I have November 2018, and the first day for November 2018 is a Thursday, and I have it formatted as a short date, and I have the same exact month formatted in general format to reveal the real number stored behind the scene. So the 1st of November 2018 is 43,405. And now let me create the weekday function for the top row. So I'll be typing equal weekday. Weekday of what? Weekday of this day. And then I close the bracket and then hit enter and then click and drag and see the numbers. So as you have noticed, the weekday function is returning a number, and because Sunday is the first day of the week, so for Sunday it's returning 1, for Monday it's returning 2, and so on and so on. So let's have a look one more time at this number 43,405. If you look at the first day of any month and subtract the weekday minus 1, you will be getting the date in the upper left corner of your calendar. And let's do that. So I'm switching back to my calendar. I named this cell K1 start, and I would like to create the date in the upper left corner. So I start by typing equal start. That's the name of cell K1, the first day of the selected month, minus open bracket weekday. Weekday of what? Of the same date. Start, close the bracket for the weekday function, subtract 1, and then close the bracket and hit enter, and that will be the first day of the upper left corner of my dynamic calendar. Now I would like to create a different function that increments by 1 as I move to the right, and when I go down, the leftmost cell will look at the rightmost cell in the row above and add 1. How to create this function? I'll be selecting 2 non-adjacent ranges, so I'm selecting this entire range consisting of 5 rows and 7 columns, and then I press and keep holding down the Control key and click to select the remaining 6 days of the first row. And from the perspective of this active cell, I'll start creating my second function. My second function will be a conditional if function. So I type equal if, and then I hit tab. I'm creating a function that looks to the left side. So if it finds the cell in the left side blank, that simply means we need to look at the cell above in the rightmost column. So I say equal if the cell to my left, B5, is not blank, double quote, then what do you want to do? Then I want the cell to my left, which is the same exact cell B5. I'm selecting B6 and I'll move up to select B5, and then I hit +1. And then I hit comma. I'm in the value if false. What if it is blank? In this case, I would like to get the value from the rightmost column in the row above. So I'll be selecting cell H4, and then note that I have to lock the column, and I hit the F4 key 3 times to lock the column and add 1 to increment by 1. And then I close the bracket now to populate this function. I hit Control Enter, and look at that. I'm incrementing by 1 as I move to the right, and when you look at the leftmost column in the second row, it's looking at the rightmost column in the row above, and it's adding 1, and now I created my dynamic calendar. Let me test it before I apply some formatting. So I'll go to the month and click on the down arrow, and let's say I want the month of June. Everything is working fine. And if I change the year and I make it, let's say, 2017, everything is dynamic, my label is dynamic, and my calendar is dynamic. Now, let's apply some formatting. I'll be selecting all the days of this dynamic calendar, and I open the Format Cell dialog box, Control 1. In the Format Cell dialog box, I would like to apply a custom format to the date, so I go to Number and click on Custom Format. Keep an eye on the sample, because what I would like to do is to keep only the 2 digits for the day. Day starts with letter D, so I type DD, and look at that. We see the 2 digits for the day, and now if I hit enter, I would have formatted my entire calendar, and I can see the day. So now I would like to apply a conditional formatting so that the days corresponding to the months before and after will appear different in color. So I'll be selecting my entire calendar. I go to conditional formatting and say I would like to create a new rule, and then I'll be using a formula for my new rule. And in this formula, I'll just compare the months of the selected day to the months of cell K1. So I'll type equal month, and then I open bracket, months of cell B5. I have to unlock cell B5 by hitting the F4 key 3 times, and then a smaller than, greater than, which means does not equal the month. Open bracket for cell K1. In this case, what would you like to do? This one should be locked. I want to apply a formatting, and my formatting will consist of a gray fill color. Let's say this gray fill color, and then for the font, I'll also make it gray, so it will look a little different than the other months. Okay, let's make it darker gray. That will be better. Hit OK, and then hit another OK. And now I have my calendar nicely formatted. Let me test it one more time. So if I click on the down arrow for the months and select September, everything is nice, everything is dynamic. If I change the year and make it 2018, so I have the label dynamic, I have my calendar dynamic, and everything is working just fine. Let me now apply some borders. So I'll be selecting all my calendar, and then I click on the down arrow for borders and be selecting more borders. Here I would like to select the line style, and then I want to select the color. I'll make my border gray in color, and I'll be setting the borders, the inner borders gray, and then I'll be making a thicker outer border, and I'll make it even darker in color, and I'll be setting the outer border thicker and darker in color. And now let's hit OK, and I would have created my calendar. Now let me hide all the preparation for this calendar. So I'm selecting all the data in columns K to Q, and I want to hide it by changing the color to white. I will be also hiding all the grid lines by going to the View tab and say I don't want to see grid lines. I want to change the months. Let's try October, and I want to change the year. Let's try 2019. everything looks great, everything is dynamic, and we were able to create a dynamic calendar for any month in any year. If you enjoyed this training video, like, comment, share and subscribe. Thank you for watching and see you in our next training video.